Hi out there, this is Cynthia Howard. Welcome to my show from Claremont, New Hampshire. And it's also called FREEDOMCAST, where we discuss local, state, and national issues. And I haven't been on the radio for a while. I was working on the Trump campaign as a county chairperson, and we received the highest voter turnout in the state of New Hampshire, which is a tremendous accomplishment. And I thank all the people that worked on the campaign in the county. You know who you are. Thank you very much. And I'm hoping that in the upcoming school election on Tuesday, March 14th, we can do the same, have a high voter turnout. And usually it isn't the case unless you have something controversial on the ballot or you have some really well-known candidates. And this year that isn't the case, but again, I'm hoping you come out because your vote is important. Your vote is your voice. And if you don't show up at the deliberative session, which was held on Tuesday, February 8th, where I participated, then you need to come out on Tuesday, March 14th and echo how you feel, echo your sentiments in the secret booth on the ballot. That's something you need to do, and you need to get more familiar with what's going on and not listen just to certain media and certain officials, because they don't always have the answer and they don't always disclose all the facts and tell you the correct information. And I'm hoping to do that on my broadcast today. So we will be talking about the school budget, and that's the first order of business here. And as I said, local officials have been touting it as a lower tax budget, because when you combine all the warrant articles, they say the tax rate is going to go down 5 cents per thousand, which is $5 on a $100,000 home. Now, that remains to be seen, as they have been losing what they call stabilization state aid, which is the amount that's paid to a school district based on population. Well, they have been losing population, so they're losing state aid. They recently lost $460,000, which increased our tax rate this year by $1.45 per thousand, which is approximately $145 on a $100,000 home. And as long as they continue to have less student population, then they'll continue to receive less student aid, and and your budget figures that they say are negative, that are where it's a tax reduction, whether it's 5 cents or 10 cents or whatever it is, will actually be an increase, maybe 50 cents, maybe $1, but it's already happened and has already been the case, so they can't back away from that. That it happened once, it can happen again, and it can happen 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road. So you just have to be aware of that. When they're telling you, oh, the budget is $152,000 less than last year, that's the main budget, which is at $34.7 million, and it includes contracts for the teachers, benefits for the teachers, contracts for the principals, benefits for the principals and other administrators, at a tune of well over $300,000. An average teacher will receive a raise of $1,237. That amounts to 2 to 3 times the consumer price index, which now stands at 1.3%. Now I ask you, any of you in small businesses, any of you who work in a company, if you are getting raises of that magnitude, perhaps you're getting a raise at like 1.3% at the cost of living, but I doubt very much you're getting one that's 2 or 3 times the rate of the cost of living, which they will be getting if this budget passes, because that is contained in the main budget. Yeah, and yes, it is transparent, but do you realize what that means? And then also they'll be getting a longevity payment of approximately $2,000 for 18 years or more service. This is all nice, but when you're losing money, say if a business you were working at was losing money, what is the first thing they do? They cut jobs. They cut the budget. Well, in this case, they're not cutting jobs. They're adding when they should be subtracting. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, anybody with any kind of logic would say, why are they getting more just to prove a point that, oh, we can stick it into the main budget, the voters are going to approve it because it's in the lower of the two budgets, because the default budget is $152,000 more than the main budget. So it's almost, I had said this at the deliberative session, it's almost a game of cat and mouse, or a choice between two undesirables, and most people would pick the lowest, but by picking the lowest, which is the main budget, you're actually probably picking the highest because they're getting their salaries and their benefits. And I'm not against people getting increases in pay. I'm certainly not. But when they're getting it 2 to 3 times the consumer price index, and when we're losing money, yeah, I am. I'm sorry, I am. That's just the way it has to be. So when you go in that booth and see that the default budget is much higher, 152,000, actually last year's budget, you should probably vote for that. That's what I'm going to do, because even though it's slightly more, it's maybe slightly less because the contracts are not in there. The benefits are not in there. Send them a message. Show them that, when we're losing money in the school district, when we have less population, you shouldn't be getting more. So vote the main budget down in favor of the default budget. This is also common sense, and they don't want you to see that point, that you're supposedly anti-teacher or anti-school if you disagree with them or against their contract, but that's not the case. The case is common sense, that we don't have the money, we're losing students. So why should they be getting more? They shouldn't. And in fact, their health insurance, we are subsidizing even more of that. Instead of 90%, which we currently are doing, we're going to be subsidizing 97%. Now, how many companies do that? Most companies in New Hampshire, even if it's a good, well-paying company, they probably subsidize 80-85%. Now, I took a look on the internet from the Kaiser Family Foundation website, which has a lot of different studies and a lot of different polling data, and they did a study on the state of New Hampshire. And what they showed, the Kaiser Family Foundation, was that in New Hampshire, the average employer subsidizes their employee insurance at 75%, and the employee picks up 25%. That's not a lot, of course, with Obamacare and all the changes in the health care law. I'm sure it's a burden for them to subsidize even 75%. But why should taxpayers be paying 90 or 97% that they don't even get themselves? I mean, or if you're a retiree and you don't get it yourself, or if you're in a small business, why should you be paying more for them when you don't get it yourself? It makes no sense at all. They could at least be fair with the voters. It's not about them having this. It's not about them getting raises. It's about how fair it is and how unfair it is for us. So Tuesday, March 14th, make sure you go in that voting booth and show them who's really in charge, who's really the boss, just as you did when Mr. Trump was elected president and we had the highest voter turnout in the county. Right now, the school district is the largest employer in Claremont, the third largest employer in the county. So, I mean, it's a business. Even Middleton McGoodwin said 80% of the budget, the school budget, is driven by employees' salaries and benefits. If that doesn't tell you anything, I don't know what will. If it's 80% driven, how much education are the children getting? Not a heck of a lot. It's become this education complex where it's all about personnel, all about raises, all about benefits, and all about electronics, technology, computers, which are good, but yet are they supplementing the education of the children? And if they are, maybe they ought to be homeschooled or sent to a school choice program, such as the president has talked about, and such as people at the state level, such as the governor and Frank Edelblu, who was the education commissioner, has talked about. It's probably a good idea because our current system is not sustainable. When we're paying 80% of the school budget for salaries and benefits and 20% goes to education, I'm sorry, something is desperately wrong here. I mean, anybody can see that. And then 60% to 65% of your tax bill is for education taxes, including local and state taxes. So that's not sustainable anyway. And we are the highest property taxes. And for them to turn a blind eye or say, your taxes are going down by 5 cents on 1,000 because the budget is lower than last year, but we're paying the teachers more, it just doesn't cut it. It really doesn't. I mean, they could really go in there and make some serious cuts, and they're going to have to restructure the whole school system to do that. I realize that, but you know what? They're going to have to. Or if they don't, there won't be a school system, because people can no longer afford to pay these high property taxes because of the school system. They think they're just high and mighty and they're better than anyone else. Well, they're not. And they've got to come back down to earth and see how the real people live. The default budget is $152,000 more, but again, I would urge you to vote for that just to send them a message and say, you know what, we're not going to take a gamble and lose more state aid and end up paying more the following year like we did this year, because you told us it was only going to go slightly up this year, and guess what? On this current budget, slightly up became $1.45 per thousand, so the 5 cents savings we get now is probably going to be double or triple come next year or the year after. And then also, when you think about all the other contracts, such as the secretarial contract, the maintenance contracts, the para contracts, these are contracts for 3 years. I realize they don't get what the teachers get, but you know what? You know, we can't project, they can't project how much school aid they are going to get in 3 years, let alone 1 year. So if you vote for those contracts as well, you're asking for trouble. You're going to get a tax increase regardless of what they say, because maybe it won't happen this year, but maybe the following year or by the third year, you're going to lose more school aid. And then what? Taxes are going up because you voted for those packages. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you to err on the side of caution. They just look at now 5 cents on 1,000, but they don't look down the road in 6 months and see another loss of school aid, or 2 years down the road, or 3 years down the road. Yeah, they should all be 1 year contracts, not 2 or 3, where at least we won't be hit so hard with a tax impact. But they don't do that, because by the second or third year, you probably forget about that. You probably say, how come our taxes are going up? You don't recall voting for that increase by voting for those school contracts, for the union contracts that are like the thing. I mean, their top priority. The main budget is focused with the administrators and the teachers, and the other contracts are tucked on separate warrant articles, which I will go through with you in the upcoming podcast here. But we're very troubled times. These are very troubled times, and to continue voting yes on budgets and voting yes on salaries just because people are your friends or just because you trust them is not good enough. You're going to have to look deeper, as I have looked deeper, as I have been studying this issue for a long time, and as I was a school board member, and I saw firsthand what goes on behind closed doors. And I'll tell you what, it isn't pretty, and it's all for the union, not for the taxpayer. It's of, by, for the unions and their contracts and their wages and their salaries and benefits, and not for you, the taxpayers. And something has got to change. Something drastically has to change. And we have some candidates that are going to be on the school election ballot come Tuesday, March 14th. And those being the ones that I'm in favor of are for the 1 year term, Rebecca Zullo, and replacements for the current school board members. I would choose Mike Petrin and Dave Pachetti to add a new voice. It's not that I have anything against Frank Sprague, but I believe that he has too many ties to the administrators in the school, and he's been a long-time employee, and that's something we don't want. We want some new faces, somebody with more of an open mind, and I would say that would be Dave Pachetti, Mike Petrin, and Rebecca Zullo. We do not want people that are tied to the school district, such as Mike Sear and Richard Seaman, even though they're well-known names out there. Don't vote for the well-known. Vote for the lesser of the evils, and vote for the better choices. And the 3 better choices are the ones that I said: Pachetti, Petrin, and Zullo. And I hope you come out on Tuesday, March 14th, and vote in favor of your tax dollar. So Article 3 is the paraprofessionals agreement for $119,950 for the first year. Second year is $110,994, and third year is $80,106. Article 5 is your secretary's agreement. First year will be $26,162. Second year, $27,362. third year is $30,807. And again, we cannot project that long down the road, so it would be best to vote them down. And I am signing off for now. This is Cynthia Howard. Thank you for listening to my show.